so much. I am Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams and a retired captain in the New York City Police Department. I really want to thank all who are here today, starting with the first union I was a part of as a member was the Police Benevolent Association, also known as the PBA. We have the second vice president here, Joseph Alejandro, and it really just shows the significance and importance that the PBA is looking at the recent series of suicides and how at the top of their leadership we are not going to leave any stones unturned on finding how do we alleviate the number of suicides and the impact on the men and women who serve and protect our city every day. We are joined by Uprising Yoga, the Center for Mind-Body Meditation, Brooklyn Meditation Center, Operation Warrior Shield, and Be Time. I want to just, on a personal note, talk about how important this initiative is. Meditation clearly saved my life when I left the police department. Little did I know, at the conclusion of 22 years of looking and visiting and watching man carry out cruelty to man, you believe that you can laugh it off. You believe that you can just have a quick drink or two. You believe that you can just bury it and it goes away when you take off your uniform. But no, to the contrary. PTSD is real. It's not only something that takes place in Afghanistan, it takes place on Alabama Avenue in Brooklyn, it takes place on Arvin Place, on Rockaway, it takes place in every corner. Day after day of living trauma, tragedy, violence, and a lot of anger that's come from misguided elements of the public. Just you internalize that every day. And when I took that uniform off and had a moment of reflection, I realized how many pieces I was broke into. And the only way I restitched those pieces back together was finding transcendental meditation. And 2 times a day, from the day I wake up to when I go to sleep, I take a moment to meditate for only 20 minutes a day. The healing process started many years ago, and that process continues. This is so significant. When you see officers taking their lives, it's time for us to stop thinking traditionally and believing that one can just go on with their career without knowing the impact. And that impact manifests itself in different ways. Some of the actions you see on the street, some of the interactions with the public, this is years and years of stress. One encounter with a police officer is not an encounter that just happened at that moment. It could be an encounter that happened a week earlier. An officer can stop someone on the street, and he could have just came from an incident where he lost a partner. He could have just came from an incident where he just saw a baby die. Just go back when we saw 2 officers shot days before Christmas. Those police officers still had to respond to calls of service. That trauma is real, and that's why we're here today. We want to address a major public safety issue and overall well-being for our police officers. And I want to take the moment to applaud Commissioner O'Neill for the New York City Police Department Health and Wellness Task Force, but we have to do more. This is not just a task force response. We have to go beyond the peer counseling services that the task force is going to put in place, because there's a culture in the police department that police officers are reluctant because of history of revealing whatever trauma they are experiencing, because often that is held against you, if not formally on paper, then informally in actual how you are assigned and how you are treated. So peer counseling sounds right, and it's the right sound bite, but it's not going to take a bite out of the suicides that we are seeing. We have to do more. So what are we saying? Every year, police officers go to the range to shoot twice a year for what's called in-service training. They learn new tactics, new skills, new tools to use to fight crime. We are saying allow one of those tools to be a tool that they can take with them for the rest of their lives and assist their families who also experience the same trauma that they experience. That tool is a simple tool that has been around as long as man has been around. Not only monks meditate, borough presidents meditate, teachers meditate, doctors and lawyers meditate. Let's give our officers these tools. And it's not a mandatory action that they must take. It is giving them the tool, giving them the equipment. As they have a toolkit when they carry out their police function, we want to give them a toolkit of internal healing that they need. And so we're calling for training on meditation, partners with meditation experts to come in and give these officers meditation training so they can use to de-escalate the trauma that they experience every day. We have 4 suicides that included Deputy Chief Stephen Silks, Detective Joseph Calabrese, Officer Michael Caddy, and Kevin Price. They have all lost their lives, and we just want to take a moment of reflection for those officers who have lost their lives. What is not counted are the numbers of officers who contemplated suicide, or the number of suicides that takes place with overuse of an action that can take away your lives. We do not count those numbers. We count only the ones that are in the coffins, not the ones who are broken while they're not in a coffin. My experience of 22 years say that stress is real. The feelings of anxiety, pressure, grief brought on many years of internal trauma, and it's time to repair that trauma. It's a known fact that law enforcement is high risk. Exposure to violence and human suffering, as well as other anxiety-inducing aspects of the job, such as physical demands and non-standard schedules, around-the-clock schedules, the countless number of overtimes, the hours away from your family, just a combination of stress. It leads to real PTSD. It is very much part of the occupation. This stress leads to increased absenteeism, job turnover, and declines in performance. Over time, stress can impact officers' ability to protect the communities they serve and can lead to increased tension, and that is our task to de-escalate that tension. In a job where violence and tragedy are routine, violence and tragedy are routines. This is not TV where you can just go to the next episode. The episode remains with you throughout your entire career. Police officers internalize the stress and trauma themselves that they experience. We studied this issue several years ago with Norman Siegel, Gail Brewer, and myself. We put out a report that talked about the mental health aspects of policing, and we even thought outside the box of allowing officers to go on sabbatical for those law enforcement officers to re-energize their internal batteries. And this is not weird science. Research at 2 prestigious institutions, Johns Hopkins and Harvard, have provided evidence that secular meditation and mindfulness-based stress reductions are evidence-based practices proven to decrease aspects of psychological stress, such as anxiety, depression, and pain. That is part of the byproduct of policing. Mindfulness has been shown to enhance self-insight, morality, intuition, and fear modulation. Evidence also suggests that mindfulness meditation has numerous health benefits, including increased immune function, improvement to well-being, and reduction of psychological stress. We're already beginning to implement this, as we're going to hear from one of our speakers. We're doing this in our schools already. We have put in place an initiative where I sent several administrators and school officials away to become trainers so they can train the trainers. We believe every child should start their day with 15 to 20 minutes of meditation as they deal with the healing process of their stress. So it is our belief that learning meditation and MBSR skills such as mindfulness, breathing, and body scanning are easily teachable, and we want this to be done. We're not the first. This is something that is already taking place in other police departments, but we're the largest and we're the best. And if we do it, it will cascade throughout this entire country, and we can see less tension between the public and our police forces. Arizona is already doing this. Oregon is doing it. California is doing it. But as the nation's largest police force, we have an obligation and responsibility to do it for our 30+ thousand men and women of all ranks, from rookie police officer to chief, and even extended to many of our 9/11 operators who also experience the trauma. Trauma is the occupational hazard of law enforcement, and we have ignored it. We looked at the physical aspects and never looked at the internal aspect. We must start feeding the soul, and the soul is fed with high nutritional mental meditation. And so I want to again thank the PBA for really being a leadership on this conversation. They're making it clear. They will not leave one stone unturned to alleviate the stress of our police officers, if not eradicate the numbers of suicides that we have experienced. And so, Second Vice President of the PBA, Joseph Alejandro.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Borough President. I want to thank the Borough President for his leadership on this issue. I also want to thank him for his compassion, as well as all those behind me for their compassion on this matter. Our officers face stress every day. We all know that. We accept that. But sometimes we lie to ourselves and think it doesn't bother us. We leave something where we show serious compassion over a tragedy that occurred, and then the next minute we're going to something and we're facing sheer terror. These things happen to our officers every day, and it builds. It's like moss growing on a rock, right? It's just constantly building. Well, what will take that moss off? We don't know. But something happens, and our officers sometimes wind up hurting themselves, and they lie to those around them. So we're offering a simple tool to help them, try to make their lives a little better, to take care of their families. That's another thing. Our president wrote an op-ed yesterday talking about the serious stresses our officers face, not just internally within the department, externally. We face scrutiny every day. And when we want to talk about these things, the first place we don't go to is the department. And that hurts our members too, because they are now scrutinized, they are now somehow marginalized by the department, and that's a serious issue. So we're offering, as Borough President Adams said, a simple tool, a tool that has existed for thousands of years. It could be prayer. Prayer is also a form of meditation. It could be anything else, transcendental meditation, Zen meditation, however you want to pick it. There's a form of meditation out there. 5 minutes a day could be very helpful. Recognizing that you're now de-stressing, and even recognizing when you're under stress, that's helpful too. So we all hope that we can do something that is actually effective for our members. It's cheap. Let's get it. We all know everybody worries about economics, but this is cheap, and it's an actual tool, a mental tool belt that our members can go to and refer to and hopefully help themselves and their family. And it's a way also that they don't have to think about potentially hurting themselves. Unfortunately for us, that moment that last moment we're thinking of potentially doing something, we have the tool right there to do it. Everyone else has denied that, but our members, it's right there. And they make that mistake and they turn something, a permanent solution to a temporary problem. That's something we need to take care of. And I thank everybody here for showing that compassion and the leadership. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Well said. The next speaker has really been a pioneer in this conversation. His assistance with the military and other law enforcement agencies, Operation Warrior Shield, my good friend Ed Shulman.
Thank you, sir. I am Ed Shloman, Marine Vietnam veteran and Chief Master Sergeant and Chairman of Operation Warrior Shield, who for the last 9 years have been in the trenches working with the first responders, military, and veterans throughout the country. I'm also a proud father of an Air Force retired F-15 fighter pilot, a recently retired NYPD son who served this city 30 years. So you see, stress has been in the Shloman family for a long time. Several current and former law enforcement officers nationwide told a major magazine, reaching out for help can be a loaded process. Many are haunted by the pervasive fear that undergoing treatment will have professional repercussions, such as them being passed over for promotion or removed from patrol work. Police culture places an enormous value on strength and resilience, especially in the high-stakes situations, and the stigma of mental health issues means officers who seek treatment fear that they'll be seen as a liability to their peers. This is the same belief in our armed forces, where for the last 9 years we have been working very successfully to heal their hidden wounds brought about by the stress of their profession. We have been successful in working with many of the Fire Department of New York too, including the former Commissioner Sal Cassano. And I was proud to be part of helping at least 2 of the firemen who were buried not too far from here when the World Trade Center happened. One of our tools is the non-religious modality, as you heard, of transcendental meditation, or TM. Medically proven to help heal the major causes of stress as well as to build resilience. That is not a reason why we are here today to offer suggestions and to work hand in hand with the NYPD leadership and especially the NYPD training management. So let's get together to overcome the black plague of the 21st century, stress. It is an honor to be partnered with Borough President Eric Adams and his talented staff. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ed. What you have done for the years. We also really want to be thankful to Dr. James Gordon, MD, traveling from Washington, D.C., to come and add his voice to this. He's part of the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. Doctor?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Borough President Adams, for inviting me to come here and for the effort that you're making to deal with what I really know is a public health crisis of trauma and chronic stress in NYPD. And thank you too for wanting to create a comprehensive approach which puts meditation at the center of that approach. I'm a psychiatrist by training. I was a researcher at the National Institute of Mental Health. I'm a clinical professor at Georgetown Medical School, chaired the White House Commission on Complementary and Alternative Medicine Policy, and most recently have written a book called The Transformation, Discovering Wholeness and Healing After Trauma. For 25 years at the Center for Mind-Body Medicine, we have been working with whole populations that have been traumatized by war, climate-related disasters, violence, and historical trauma, both here in the United States, in the Balkans, the Middle East, in Africa, and soon in Central Asia as well. And what we have seen is that what is needed is an approach that combines a number of different techniques and tools and gives the capacity to help themselves to the whole population, not something that's just in the hands of a few providers and not something that's just offered to the few people who manifest the most dramatic symptoms. If you're going to work to deal with this kind of public health crisis, it means bringing a program to the whole community, the whole institution, the whole region, in this case to all of NYPD. We're currently working in comparable situations, I suppose, with the Veterans Administration, the largest region of the Veterans Administration in the South, and also in Broward County following the shootings at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And the method that we have of self-awareness, self-care, and group support, which we teach to people in those communities. Sometimes they're clinicians, sometimes they're teachers, sometimes they're active community members, and sometimes they're high school kids. We teach this method to them, and then we teach them how to bring it to their whole community, to bring it to tens or even hundreds of thousands of people. That is the kind of approach that's clearly needed here. And what we see is that people who use that kind of approach, including those with diagnosable post-traumatic stress disorder, that 80% of the children and adults who join a 10-week-long mind-body skills group with PTSD no longer have it after 10 weeks, and those gains hold to 3, 7, 10 months follow-up. But it's not only important to have this kind of intervention, it's also important to create an ongoing culture of healing, where it's possible for police officers to both be vulnerable and feel safe being vulnerable, to learn the techniques, to share what they're learning with others, and at the same time to call on their own strengths, which they clearly have, to help them through the crisis that may be affecting them. And it's crucially important not only to work with the officers, but for the leadership to understand and experience the power of the kind of approach that we're all talking about. So once again, I'm very happy to be here, and I welcome any opportunity to be of service here in New York, where I grew up and had my psychiatric training. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that what Dr. Gordon is important, and that is why our call is to, one, ensure that every new recruit is armed with this information at the time of their initial training, and then the continuous follow-up with in-service training, because it's not a one-time training. You should continuously reinforce the information, and we want to change the culture of law enforcement throughout the entire city. And when you get the initial training in the police academy and then reinforce it with in-service training, we will start the process of changing that culture, that you must internalize your stress and your pain, but you can actually find ways of removing and healing. Our final speaker, I'm really happy to see BK Brooklyn Meditation, and Pamela Brewer will be representing them. Pamela?
We want to take a moment to thank the Borough President and these wonderful organizations for calling attention to this hugely important issue and offer such a profound and real solution to these ongoing tragedies. We have seen through our own eyes and in our own hearts that through meditation one is able to calm the nervous system and deeply release accumulated stress and trauma, improving all facets of life. We believe that all people can benefit from meditation, including and perhaps especially those who regularly face uncertain and often dangerous situations. We wholeheartedly support the call to provide mind-body wellness services to those who sacrifice their own safety in service of protecting our neighborhoods. We would like to express our gratitude and highest regards to these brave men and women. We trust that these important and positive steps will radiate throughout our communities and bring about greater peace in our shared and beloved city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.